Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for Tefra ICA's Art School and Career Panel Series. This is the first discussion panel of the series this year, and tonight we're going to be focusing on fine art practices. My name is Lydia Caldwell. I'm the Tefra ICA Education and Public Programs Manager, and I'm so glad that you can all join us this evening. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the original stewards of the land on which Tefra ICA stands, known today as Reston, Northern Virginia, and the surrounding areas in Washington, D.C.'s region, which include the Piscataway and Monohoic people, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities that make their home here today. Our three panelists, who I will introduce momentarily, will be asked a series of questions about the application process to art schools, specific questions regarding art school portfolios, and they'll provide tips on pursuing a career in the fine arts. After the panel discussion, we'll open it up to a Q&A session with those in the audience. All right, so without further ado, I will introduce our panelists. So we're joined by KJ Lee, who is the founder of the New York School of Arts, or the NYSA, in Vienna, Virginia. KJ previously served as the head director of the PI Art Center in New York City, where she collaborated with various art school directors and contemporary artists. With a wealth of experience, KJ specializes in teaching the arts, particularly in the college portfolio program. She is also an admission portfolio reviewer for the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, offering valuable guidance to students. And currently, KJ is pursuing her doctoral studies in educational leadership at Virginia Commonwealth University. She holds an MFA from the School of Art Institute of Chicago and an MA in art education from Sukmyung University in South Korea. KJ's career and educational journey highlight her passion for the arts and her commitment to shaping the future of art education. We're also joined by Zia Palmer, who is an artist, archivist, and family historian based in the DC metro area. Her practice is rooted in analog and alternative photographic processes and focuses on the relationship between land, time, and memory. She is interested in how these topics shape her own identity and the preservation of culture over time. Zia received a BFA in Art and Visual Technology with a concentration in photography from George Mason University, and her work has been exhibited in various galleries across the region, including the Target Gallery, the Gillespie Gallery, and the Tefra Institute of Contemporary Art. And last but not least, we're joined by Andrew Norris. Andrew is an artist and educator who received his BFA from East Tennessee State University and his MFA from the University of Florida, where he also earned a graduate certificate in gender sexualities and women's studies. He creates figurative oil paintings and explores how the often undervalued forms of Americana and heartland kitsch can be recharged as instruments through which to generate and explore queer identities. His work has been featured in numerous national group exhibitions, including Miami University, Zong Institute for Contemporary Art in South Korea, and Capital One. Norris has been awarded fellowships to attend artist residencies at the Atlantic Center for the Arts and at the University of Wisconsin. His work has been featured in New American Paintings, issue 153, and he has work in the collection from the Tom of Finland Foundation. Norris has taught in the summer pre-college program, art foundation, and painting and printmaking departments at Virginia Commonwealth University, and he is currently an assistant professor and studio art coordinator at Virginia State University. So join me in welcoming our three panelists. Thank you all so much for being here. I'll go ahead and jump into the first question if you all are ready. My first question for you is just, at what point in your life did you decide to pursue a career in the arts, and how did you make that decision? Andrew, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I will. Thank you. That's a huge question, right? I think, for me, the word career is sort of interesting to me because I always knew I was going to be an artist from a very young age, but I never thought of it as like a career or a job, just because I really didn't know what the options are. And it really wasn't something, quite frankly, that I sort of worried about up until graduation. Being a painter, I always knew I was just going to paint, and that was the sort of dream. But once you graduate, it's like, oh, well, what are you going to do with that? So when I was pursuing my BFA, I started becoming very interested in the idea of teaching, just because I really, really loved my professors. I thought of them as mentors. I really thought it was like a possible career path for me. So started looking into, how do you go about that? Getting an MFA, being able to teach at college level. So I did that, and I pursued teaching, and I'm a professor now. And I really love being a professor. And one of the reasons that I had the sort of dream to do that is because I saw that my professors were able to make art alongside teaching. So that was the sort of thing that you just did, right? You teach, you have your own practice, you do your own research, you might attend residencies, you might do workshops, you might, you try and keep a consistent showing, whether a group exhibition, solo exhibitions. You go to conferences, so all of those sort of things was just very interesting to me, and then I could do that and teach at the same time and have a career um, uh, going toward something that I could sort of see as a goal, right? So teaching was this sort of goal, and you knew that you could adjunct, you could teach in a certain way to get to full time, and then you could do like workshops, other sort of art venues other than universities. Whereas with art, it's not as sort of a straight path. There's not a sort of like ducks in a row to get to a certain place because there's so many different avenues that you can go, right? So for me, like as a kid, I always thought I would be an artist, but I didn't actually know what that meant. I just thought it meant you drew all day and you could paint, um, and you didn't really have to worry about money. And then, once I graduated, I'm like, oh, what am I actually going to do with this? And I spent some time like as a photographer and as like a sort of freelance graphic designer too. But I think teaching is more of my career, and then painting and showing, that's just sort of something I would do anyway, even if I didn't teach. So I don't know if that exactly answers the question of like pursuing it as a career, but um, that's sort of how I differentiate the two, with painting, being an artist full time, and then also teaching. To me, they're sort of one and the same because I'm learning in the classroom, I'm teaching my students certain things, and then I can go to the studio and then sort of implement those things that I've been teaching. So they're sort of one and the same a little bit.
Wonderful. Thank you. Zia, do you want to jump in next?
Yeah. So I definitely agree with Andrew. Like career is a weird word sometimes. And I have a very convoluted path to to getting here. So art has always been part of my life, and I come from like a very artistic family. So growing up, I was always making things and creating things, and I got really into photography in high school, and took it as an elective pretty much all through high school. And then I knew I wanted to go to college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I didn't really have a path right away. And then I thought I was gonna be an astrophysicist, and was majoring in physics for a while. And at the same time, I was still doing photography and making art. And I started minoring in photography. And then at some point, I was just like, why am I minoring in photography? Like, this is what I love. I should just do this. And I was spending so much time in the art building, and it just made sense. So that's kind of how I ended up to my degree. And then I graduated in spring of 2019. So obviously then we entered the pandemic shortly after that, which threw a wrench in kind of everything. So I'm actually now working as a software developer, which is totally not art related. And so it's, for me, it's kind of the thing that funds all the fun stuff that I do. So for me, doing that is a steady income that pays the bills and allows me to be creative without the stress and like pressure of having to figure out how you're going to make money in the art world. So that's kind of how I ended up here, but it's one of those things where I don't really plan on being a software developer forever. So who knows, I might end up going back to get an MFA or something like that. Or I don't really like set myself on one track. I just kind of go with the flow and see what feels right and what works for my life at the moment. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
KJ?
Hi, this is KJ. First of all, thank you for inviting me, panelist in this program. Thank you, Lydia. Nice to meet you, everybody. So my answer is very simple. Most of artists and most of art seeking student. I was very good with the art subject from my early childhood. And then elementary school, middle school, and high school, I always received the A+ grade in mostly in the art project. And then that always showcased as and then my work is always showcased as example of all the students. So naturally, this bring me a happy and confidence. And then naturally that guided me to major in art in college. So I purchased the Bachelor of Fine Art degree in South Korea. And then while I was in bachelor's program, I have a lot of teaching opportunity. So that inspired me. Let's be an art teacher. So I majored for art education, and then I got a certification teaching art in middle and high school in Korea. But while I'm doing teaching, I feel, I should practice art more. Like I cannot be a teacher forever. So that bring me to come to United States. So I did my master in Chicago, and then fully actively practice as a self artist. And after that, after graduate master program, I moved to New York, and then I really working hard to be an artist. But for living, I have to also teach. And then so I was kind of in between. Am I be an educator? Am I be an artist? Sometimes the artist portion is bigger. Sometimes education portion is bigger. But right now I'm operating like a institution of art education institution, and I just established a private high school in Fairfax County. So I'm more working as a not even teacher, more like a management of the facilitating the art school. But so my answer is simple. Like I was enjoying art. I hope that was very always I was very good student with art. Art make me happy. So that's my I make my career with art. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's fun to hear from all of you and just realize that I think in a lot of our cases, the art world sort of chose us rather than us choosing an arts career. So I appreciate hearing all of those different paths. I'd love to hear a little bit kind of more along that line that KJ led us into. What advice would you give to high school students or early career professionals who are beginning to develop portfolios?
For early career artists, I can give different advising than high school student. For the portfolios, like a student, because portfolio, like high school portfolio student, they have a strong aim. Like they are making portfolio to get in the school. That's their main purpose for now. So they have to look at what their dream school require on their work. So there's a lot of school in the United States and England, like Europe, but you have to make sure admission website, many school require different portfolio. So some school wanna see more artistic skills, some school wanna see more body of work. Like some school which doesn't have foundation year, they wanna see more of your major specific piece. So high school students, since their portfolio is the reason they are making portfolio is to get in the college, they have to be clearly understand each school's guideline for the portfolio. But for early career of the artist, it's different. Early career artist is let's say they recent graduate from the college or recent graduate from the graduate school. In my early career as an artist, I spent most of my time in the studio. While sometimes it's highly productive, sometimes I feel like kind of waste of time. But the spending time in the studio is very important. Something like soccer player practice soccer every day, so that studio time should be your life. Even sometimes it's not productive. You have free time until you go there and then sitting there thinking about there. So constantly studio practice is important. Well, I kind of regret I should go more open outside, get more inspiration. So you have to make a good community is also very important as early career of artist.
Thank you. Andrew, do you have any advice for students in high school or in art school that are developing portfolios?
Yeah, I want to sort of echo what KJ said, because I think what high school students might not think of, or if they're wanting to pursue an education in the arts, something that they might not think of, is sort of balancing your time management, and it's really sort of learning how you as an individual work best and how you should sort of manage your time, and that's something that um, as an educator myself, it's not something I can sort of teach you, right? Like, there's ways that I can teach you as I sort of navigate certain projects and sort of lean you into certain ways of working. But you as an artist, you have to sort of develop your own personal way of working in the studio, going outside, getting inspiration, right? Sort of balancing your life and your studio work, because that's something that you'll do for, I do that now, right? So like balancing how you as a artist, what you're doing in the studio, making time for studio work, seeing it. Some people might not like to call it, we're talking about a career. Um, you might not want to call it like your job to go into the studio, but you might have to treat it like that. But it's all about like finding what works best for you, seeing how, okay, if I'm going to be in the studio working and concentrating on something, how long do I need to sort of give myself to create the best work, and then how much time should I sort of spend not doing that and enjoying my college life, because that's really another thing too, is like you're in college and you need to enjoy that sort of part of it. And I think what I'm seeing now, especially as someone who's teaching foundations classes, is this huge anxiety about jobs and like I'm ready, they're jumping right into it as being like, oh, I'm really worried about getting a job. And it's like, you're a freshman, you don't need to be, I mean, it's great that they're worrying about that in a way because they're conscious of stuff. But it's like, enjoy it. You're in college, you need to absorb as much as you can. And also too, this is the time to be in the studio. When you graduate, you'll have to pay rent to have a studio. This is where you can sort of come and go as you please. You can really designate time as much as you want to being in the studio. So take advantage of it and take advantage of the guest lecturers and things like that. And then I guess another piece of advice I would have for high schoolers too, um, is you don't really have to decide on what you're going to do as a career, right? Like that's something, as Ia was pointing out, that you can change throughout your life, right? And that goes for more than just people who are getting arts degrees. That happens for people with all kinds of degrees. They get a degree in something. You might not be in that specific thing when you graduate, especially right when you graduate, right? You might do that thing like 10 or 15 years down the line, but almost everyone has experiences where they jump around from job to job. You also learn things from different jobs so that you can apply for other ones. And you might find something that you didn't know you were going to go into, but you found yourself in. So I wouldn't worry so much about getting a job. I think that anxiety is valid. But give yourself a break because you're in school and you really want to designate time to building your craft and building your sort of language and how you're talking about your work, and also just like your sensibilities and how you make work. And then once you obtain skills, you start learning about different things. You start getting interested about certain things. Then you can sort of gradually tiptoe into different sorts of ideas about careers. So yeah, that would be my advice, is to not worry so much about like what are you going to get a job as right when you graduate.
Thank you. Zia?
Yeah, I think one thing that I wish I thought about in high school and then wish I did better when I was in college is networking, and reach out to people, get your portfolio looked at, learn to love critiques. Sometimes they're rough, but like that's how you build and grow and get better and better and build a stronger portfolio. There's a ton of places you can go to for portfolio reviews, but also if you have teachers or friends, like start showing your work, getting feedback. And you know, it's one of those things with critiques, like you take it with a grain of salt. Like sometimes they're rough and you might not agree, but there's always something to learn from it. But yeah, networking is like a huge piece that can really add to building your portfolio, and getting those portfolio reviews.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love all of that advice. And I think networking for me felt like something that was also really important and helpful in the beginning stages of I'll use career lightly now because we've kind of talked artistic careers, but it kind of transitions into my next question, which are, what are some other things that you did at the beginning stages of your artistic careers that you think were really important and helpful, or what would you have done differently given the opportunity? Andrew?
Yeah, and this actually sort of goes with the sort of networking. I think for me, it was always asking questions. That was the best thing that I did. Not so much, or I did it in undergrad, but I really did it in graduate school. Just asking questions, ask people, how do I get this grant? How do I apply to this residency? When I graduated from undergrad, I started sending emails out to I was like researching graduate schools online, and I was finding contact information from current graduates and like, how do you like the program? What is it like? Do I need to go to grad school? And so like asking everyone questions, it's really the best way because worst case scenario, people just say like no or don't respond to your email, and it's like whatever. But best case scenario, you learn more about something, but also you make an impression on them, right? You start to say like, oh, okay, well, this person's asking questions. They're really interested in this thing, and that's how I think. Like in graduate school specifically, I started asking like, oh, well, how do I apply for this this grant that I heard about? How do I sort of start writing a proposal to get funding from the school? And once people and professors started seeing that I was asking those questions, they started saying to themselves like, oh, well, maybe they'd be great for this committee. Let's put them on this committee, and let's have them talk to some of the incoming professors that are applying for jobs here, and having let's set them up, and maybe Andrew can ask them questions about the department and things like that. So I started just like getting onto things, and that was just because I was asking questions. No one else was, right? um and maybe they weren't sure to ask questions, but I was just a very curious person, and I'm like, oh, well, I want to do what they're doing. How do I get in on that? And like I said, like even if you get an answer, great, but it sort of plants a seed in their mind of like, oh, well, this person's like, they're asking questions, they're interested in it, right? They're like a little, um, it's like planting a little seed. So that's something that I found was very helpful because it started growing, right? It started like really setting up, and then once I got out of grad school, my professors, had me apply to this residency right out of grad school that gave me teaching experience. And so I had like my 1 year teaching experience right out of grad school. And then I was able to apply to VCU as an adjunct. And then that would lead to this position as a full-time position at Virginia State. And that was always because I was attentive and I was always invested and interested and I asked questions. You always want to be that person that's always like the first person someone thinks of, like, oh, Andrew might like want to be in on this, right? He's always asking questions. Let's have him do that. And also, I'm a yes person to my avail sometimes because it gets me in trouble because I sort of keep piling things on. Like in grad school, I did that too. But you always want to be that person that's like, oh, this position opened up. Let's have Andrew do it. He's always a yes person. So that was always helpful to me because I just began getting all these opportunities. And I like to feel that it was because I was always attentive and always being that sort of inquisitive person. So yeah, that's something that I felt was very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Zia, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Andrew. Like, ask questions, get to know your professors, because that's where you're going to find opportunities. And again, like if you're one of those people that are constantly asking questions and always present, like show up to any events that
Yes.
people promote, go to all the things. Like it's hard because you have to like balance like so many different things. Like we've talked about stressing about work after or during college. I worked all through college, and so it was sometimes hard like balancing, oh, how am I going to pay the rent, or oh, I need to spend this much time in the studio. So it's always a fine balance, but making those connections and relationships is definitely key. Another thing is apply to shows while you're in college. I don't know why that's something that didn't really occur to me until I was like at the end of undergrad, that you can just do that. It just never occurred to me. I was focused on what I was making and doing and not even thinking that like, oh, I can actually get a show at, this small local gallery or do this. And it's funny because my partner, who's also in the art world and also graduated with an art degree, he was one of those people that showed work during college, and he was also one of those people that as soon as we graduated, he had people that he had met reaching out, oh hey, there's this job opening, are you interested? Oh hey, are you available to do this thing for me? And so the job kind of comes with the networking. You'll find those opportunities along the way, so be available, meet and become friends with all your professors. And again, and if you're an undergrad, get to know the grad students at your school. And again, like networking is key. I know it's hard and it's kind of scary at first, but it gets easier the more you do it. But that's definitely how a lot of opportunities end up coming your way later. So it pays off.
Thank you. KJ,
Yeah.
I'll open the same question to you. Anything you felt that you did?
I totally agree with both of you, which I kind of regret a lot with my graduate year, because I was international student, so I have kind of pressure with like reading, language, writing. And so I didn't like, but there's always Friday, there's always opening night, like Saturday night, we have always party with the graduate student. Well, I minimize to go there because there's so many things I don't want to be behind with the assignment, homework, everything. And then I was very like I make a lot of like painting when I was graduate school because there's free studio whatever. But the most important part, like when I looking back, that if I go back that period again, I might gonna be a little bit more relaxing, hanging out with more people. Yeah, I can have more communicated with people, even like lack of my language at the time. That was my advising as well. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to say quickly to the audience, we're coming up on about the 45-minute mark. I'd love to see if you have any questions. Feel free to put them in the chat. I think we probably have time for maybe one or two more questions on my end before we transition into that Q&A session. So I'd love to ask the panelists, Do you have any advice for students who are coming up on graduation, or can you talk about your experience transitioning out of your undergraduate or graduate studies? I feel like we've just kind of covered advice for people going into school or applying into schools, but anything for those anticipating an upcoming graduation? Andrew?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think I guess my only advice would be, forget, don't really have any assumptions going out of undergrad. So there's certain assumptions, right? Like, oh, I didn't go to this prestigious school, I might not get that job. And then on the other end of that, it's like, oh, I went to this prestigious school, why aren't I getting this job, right? Um, with the art world, especially just in general, the job market, it comes down to more than just where you went to school. So there's all these assumptions about like, oh, I need to go to this nice school, or maybe my artwork needs to be like this. You never know what the in particular job really wants, right? It can come down to really just anything, right? And same thing going into graduate school. You could have like the best portfolio ever, maybe you're just not the right fit, right? So all of those assumptions of like, oh, well, I went to this, workshop and learned this or whatever. So any sort of assumptions that you have, I think, is risky, because the art world is just fickle in a lot of ways. So it's really, and I hate to keep tying it back to networking, but that really does help, because once you start to get to know people, like Zia said, right? Like people sort of know, like, oh, well, I have this person and I know could be really great for it. That's more than likely how certain jobs happen. And I know that sounds like really disappointing, especially if you're like, oh, well, I spent all this money getting this art degree, right? But it's more than just like having the right tools for it or having the right skills. It's more than that, right? You want to be a good person to have around the office, right? You want to be like a valuable asset to whatever sort of thing that they are doing. Um, and for me, I didn't go to like a prestigious school for undergrad. So now I'm teaching these students in the pre-college program, these high school students that are getting this really nice education, like before even going to college. And it's just interesting, right? Because I'm teaching that and I didn't do that myself. So you never know where you'll end up. You don't need to have some fancy art degree to get to places. And it's, if you ever think that you're sort of like not doing enough, or um, you feel like you're not doing what everyone else is doing, there's always a place for you. It's not about being better than anyone else. It's like, are you a right fit for whatever we're doing here? And that goes for the same for you, because you want to work in a place that you're a right fit for, right? So it's a balance of that. Um, and I know that can be really hard to hear for undergrads. But for me, like I said, I didn't go to like a big art school or anything, and it worked out. So
Thanks. Zia?
Yeah. I think for me, it's remember to be patient and patient with yourself. Like, I think a lot of the times, especially for me, like you graduate and it's like such a major accomplishment and you're kind of on a high. It gets really hard. Like adulting is hard and things get real afterwards, and it takes time. So like be patient with yourself, especially for undergrad students. I think like I think sometimes we have this idea in our mind of what life looks like after you get your degree, and more often than not, it's not going to happen the way you think it's going to happen. It's totally okay if you have to work at Starbucks for 6 months until you find the right job and the right fit for you.
yeah.
No one expects you to have some big fancy high paying job immediately or ever.
Hmm.
So yeah, like be patient with yourself and don't box yourself in. Like I think a lot of the times, especially in the DC area, like it's like, oh, I could work at the Smithsonian, oh, I could do this, and a lot of those jobs are really competitive, and you just have to keep applying, and it's really hard when you don't hear back and you don't hear back, but it's, you know, you just have to be patient and keep going. And having other people to talk to about it is always helpful. And again, that's like part of the networking piece that we've all talked on. Like that's definitely helps and can bring you opportunities, but it's not always easy, and that's okay. And there's no right or wrong like path after graduation.
Thank you. KJ, anything to add to that?
Oh yeah, there is some question, or do you want to cover this question first, or?
I'll transition into the Q&A in just a minute, but I do see
Okay,
people
sure.
are adding them in the chat, which I love. So feel free, participants, to keep putting them in the chat.
So, advising for the anticipating graduation student, right?
Yes, thank you.
You mean high school graduation student or college graduation student?
I think this question should be more geared towards that sort of college graduation.
Okay. So
Anyone who's
the major college student.
transitioning into a career or out of
Sure.
school or grad school.
Yeah. Like college graduate, like graduate student, their main concern is financial stability. Like because of they wanna be develop their like life, they go to college, but after degree with art, life is not that jump. So, but secure job is absolutely important as a transition to the full adulthood. However, I think it's very important to maintain your artistic practice as your with your top priority. If you're seeking go to more financial, you're not gonna have a lot of time for your art practice. Then like it's gonna be change. I remember I have a lot of friends who is in the beginning of career, they do more dog walking and then waitress because they don't have a lot of pressure in their position. They wanna have more effort, energy on their work. So those my friends become very famous right now. Then like someone who's seeking more like very secure high job, and then like because of the job stress, they cannot make a lot of progress in their work. So my recommendation as an artist, of course, money is important, living is important, but think about your art as your priority. Yeah. So I recommend the residency program is applying residency program is good to continue. Wait to get your free studio and some of Stephen to continue your artistic practice.
Thank you. All right, I think that it's about time that we can transition into the Q&A session because I have seen that there's a couple questions coming in on the chat function. I'll go ahead and start with this first one that I see, but also participants feel free to use that raise hand function if you'd prefer to unmute and ask your question directly to the panelists. I'll start with this question. Are there portfolio must or must not suggestions that you have? Andrew, do you want to start off with that one?
I'm not sure about must not, but I would definitely say that a must would be figure drawing or some sort of drawing from life. Just so you know, if you're entering a program with a like a portfolio to be accepted into the program, you'll most likely be doing some sort of drawing from life on the jump, like as soon as you get into the program. And having a good sort of understanding form, especially right now, you know, obviously we're on our phones all the time and we're being swamped with, you know, everyone wants to be like an illustrator to make the next like Cartoon Network show or whatever, which is fantastic. But even those creators had a clear understanding of drawing from life, figure drawing, you know, still lives, things like that. So I would say that's the must. Yeah, no, I'm not sure about must nots. Maybe the other panelists would know more.
KJ, I see you've
I'm
already got
very
your hand up. You want to go next?
Yeah. So portfolio in United States, there's two category of the art program. Like most of 95%, 98% of college, they foundation year, like VCUA foundation year, Mike Hayes foundation prep person SVA they foundation year. But some specific college like FIT, like Pasadena Art Center, CalArts, this is not the foundation school. Mostly no foundation school, they require very specific portfolio with only the major. Like for example, FIT, fashion portfolio, they require only fashion, nothing else. Compared to fine art based school, they want to see diverse, like drawing, painting, sculpture in different way. Like for example, the school where I graduated, School of Art Institute of Chicago, their focus is they want to see more body of work. So if you are not a figure drawer, you don't have to submit a figure drawing, but they want to see more like you are cohesive. Compared to Pratt, they require 5 observation based drawing and like some self-portrait. So like you have to really search for school more specifically. So some school there is most part, yes, there is most part like CalArts, they require figure drawing, especially they mention don't avoid hands and feet. Very specific. So you have to look at the website. If you don't know the answer, you have to contact the admission office.
Thank you. That's great
Or
advice.
find me. I know all the school.
Or go to KJ for more advice. Zia, do you have anything to add?
I think Andrew and KJ kind of covered most of it. It really depends on what program you're looking at. So do your research. The other thing is like, if there's a specific school in mind that you have, look up what their grad students are doing. Reach out to their grad students. Like, reach out on Instagram. Be like, hey, I'm thinking about this. Like, do you have any suggestions? Like, it doesn't hurt to reach out and ask those questions. But it definitely does depend on what you're looking for. And I was always told like having a wide breadth of work like is better, especially going into college. But again, it really does depend on what program you're looking at.
Thank you. I've got another question that was sent to me in the chat. It's what has felt challenging in your career and what keeps you going? Andrew, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, that was a good question too, because it does get hard, being an artist. Definitely what keeps me going is just I love art. And that's just part of who I am. It's just something I've always done. Um, you know, I want to sort of echo what Zia was talking about before, where it was you were mentioning, if you work at Starbucks after you graduate, don't get down and be patient on yourself. And that would be my advice too, is because I've had to, and we all probably have had jobs working in either, customer service or doing a job that we might feel like, oh, why am I doing this? I have this art degree, right? And that's completely normal. And don't get too down on yourself. I know how that can be. Um, Everyone starts out somewhere, and even if you're, waiting tables or working at Starbucks, you're making money, right? And you can eventually get to a place where maybe you can do art full time or teach or, whatever you're wanting to do. And there's no shame in working those types of jobs. It's completely normal. And just as an example, what we're seeing as far as like the writer strikes and what's going on in Hollywood, we all know that a lot of the famous actors that we've seen on television and in movies, they were also waiting tables and they were working customer service jobs because they weren't being paid adequately, unfortunately, right? But it's part of it, and I don't mean that as like what happened to them is right, but it's part of it in a sense that we've all been through that and don't feel shame for it. Because just last year I had my adjunct position, right? But I was also having to work full time at Michael's as a framer, and it was what it was. But I learned a lot from it because I learned how to frame artwork properly. So try and learn something as you're working those jobs that aren't the most fun or the most sort of creative. Try and learn as much as you can from them and gain as much as you can from them. While you're doing that, and definitely don't get down or depressed or feel like you're not like you're a loser right for working those types of jobs, because we've all been there.
Thank you.
Yeah. What was the question again? What feels challenging?
What has felt challenging throughout your art experience and what keeps you going?
Yeah. Challenging is everything. You're gonna come across challenges all through your life and all along the way, and there's always gonna be those ups and downs. What keeps me going is I love art. It's something that I can't not do. It's almost like a therapy for me, and you just have to like find the balance and what works for you. And there's no formula for that. It's going to depend on you and your lifestyle, and it's you know, there's a ton of options. So like, especially for me, like what worked best for me and what's working great for me now is having a job that's not really art related, because it really gives me that freedom to be creative, and it doesn't suck all my creativity out. Because sometimes it is hard when you're working and trying to produce work and financially support yourself. Like it can be really draining. So finding a balance, whether that's working at Starbucks or whether that's teaching or doing something totally unrelated, there's no standard. Like you just have to do what feels right for you and what works for you. And I think most artists will tell you that we do art because we love art, and there's really no option to not do it. But at the same time, sometimes you need to take a break, and it's okay. Like I know so many people, and like myself, like sometimes you need to take 6 months where you're not really creating work, or you're just thinking or planning, and like that's also very important. Yeah. And getting like outside, like go travel, go take a break, go experience new things, and then something will spark, and then all of a sudden you're going to be in a great spot and creating a whole bunch of stuff, and then you might hit another lull again. But yeah, just finding that balance and whatever works.
Thank you. I really appreciate that these answers kind of highlight parts of working in the arts that don't get talked about a lot. So I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of your answers. KJ, do you have anything to add to that question of what has felt challenging in your career and what?
Always my challenging part is I don't have enough time. Like when you get older and older, you're gonna have less time to do art. So as of now, I'm I'm full time, like head of director of the school, and then I'm doing my doctoral degree, so I have to do research a lot to operate the school. And then plus, after you married, you're gonna have your family. There's so much as a mom, you have to do family support. I have 2 boys, so really like when I look back the life of my New York. At that time, I was also still busy. I was full time. I was doing that, but that was nothing compared to now. So when you get older and older, you're gonna have less time. So like really important thing is you have to find the time no matter what. So like this day I wake up 4:30 and then sitting in front of the computer at 5 and then start my research before my kids wake up. So something like that, like little bit of time, you have to find a way to develop yourself. So that is very important. Yeah, and then this day I'm more focusing on more like operating art school rather than as an artist or like an individual teacher. But so sometimes that I feel bad, oh, I don't make a lot of progress in my art, but that's fine. Like sometimes there's some period of when progress is very slow, but as long as you continue it, yeah, you will remain as an artist.
Thank you. We have only a few more minutes. I think we can kind of close out the panel if there's anything else that any of our panelists would like to mention that they'd like to sort of leave us with, or something that we didn't get to touch on, but that you'd really like to share. I'll open the floor to you to add anything that our questions maybe didn't get at, if anything at all, or if our participants want to ask one more question in the chat.
There was a book that really helped me in undergrad. And is it okay if I like post it in the chat?
Please.
Okay. This really helped me as an undergrad, so hopefully it'll help others. I'm not sure if the panelists have heard of this book, but it's really just, it reads like an instruction manual almost, but it really makes certain things like you know, writing a CV and an artist statement and a contract and starting your own business sort of thing. But it sort of helped me sort of ease into everything and sort of get the lay of the land as far as like what certain expectations were working as an artist. So yeah, hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much. I'll just read the title so that if anybody is watching this recording after the panel has taken place, then they can find it too.
Oh, great. Okay.
The book is called Art/Work, Everything You Need to Know and Do as You Pursue Your Art Career. And the book is by Heather Darcy Bondari and Jonathan Melber. So if all my participants can join me in thanking the panelists, I really appreciate all of the thoughtful answers that you all provided throughout this discussion. And I'd like to just really thank you from the bottom of my heart, KJ, Andrew, and Zia, for joining us this evening. I think all of the advice that you gave was so valuable. And I'd also like to thank everybody who joined us today as an audience member. I hope that this discussion will be helpful for you as you continue or begin your career in the arts field. If you'd like to revisit anything that we went over today, as I mentioned, this program has been recorded and it's going to be available on Tefra ICA's website and also our YouTube channel soon. And we'll also go ahead and just send the recording to everybody who RSVP'd on that Eventbrite link and joined us tonight. Part 2 of the Art School and Career Panel Series discussion will focus on art history, business, education, and management. It will take place Tuesday, November 7th at 6 p.m. and it'll be in the same format as this discussion. So I'd love to see all of the audience members there for part 2 as well on November 7th. And we'll be sending you all a post-program follow-up email later this week where we'll include the details of that event as well as details on all of the upcoming public programs at Tefra ICA. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And please do stay connected with us on social media and sign up for our newsletter and just stay up to date on all things Tefra. And I hope everybody has a really wonderful evening. Thank you.